Doesn't that feel like a chore sometimes as you're building a company? And doesn't matter what stage, the journey has to be not just about what you have to do, but a lot of time it's about how much money do I have? Do I need a fundraising even more so I can build bigger team to fulfill the clients, or build a team so they can go outreach and create the community that we really need to have, then convert them. So the struggle is on money. And sometimes it feels like, oh, I thought I'm building a company here, but every day is money talk. But money is not a bad thing. Money is the exchange of energy. However, when women founders trying to get funding, we also know less than 3% of VC funding goes to women-owned companies. Why is that such a big struggle? We are interviewing many different investors as well as successful women founders in our Founding Her Future mini-series. And today we have Rashmi here with us. And before we get going, let's go into our quick intro for Health Tech Growth Podcast. And let's bring Rashmi back for her to introduce her amazing self. Can't wait for this episode.
Welcome to Health Tech Growth, the weekly podcast for healthcare founders and innovators, where we explore essential strategies to create successful and sustainable healthcare startups that improve patient outcomes and transform the healthcare industry.
Hey, Rashmi, you're definitely one of our success story that we're highlighting here today on our episode with Asha AI platform. So tell us about your background, your journey, and what really pushed you to create your own health tech solution.
Sure, Sabrina, so happy to be here and so nice to meet you. So I founded Asha after my grandmother went through her colon cancer journey in India, and just learned firsthand through the experience of helping care for her with the rest of my family, watching my mother and my uncle taking trips frequently between India and Seattle, and realizing that this entire population of elders who are tech challenged and might have accessibility issues really have no good way of managing their health at home. And so I founded Asha, which is named after my grandma, in the hopes of creating something that could help family caregivers like myself, my aunt and uncle, my mother, keep tabs on what's happening at home, and to help elderly folks to manage their care more proactively as they're aging in place. And so that was the birth of Asha. And a little background on me, I suppose. I've been in the early stage venture space for most of my career. Asha is my fifth company, third as founder, and it's been just a tremendous, amazing journey to date. So I'm happy to be here.
Yay. I know senior space is definitely blooming up, not only in the US and really across the globe, as generations of baby boomers. And at some point, we just couldn't keep up with the demand. And how are we caring for our elderlies, for us? Yes, our grandparents are starting getting to that stage, and our parents really will soon to follow as they are getting to their 60s and 70s. So how do we support them in a way of, if you think about it, all of us are in some different point of the globe, right? And then very seldomly nowadays, people are still in the hometown that they grew up in, and they still have all their community. We're really diversifying how we can support each other and going out the world and creating impact. And that's even more critical as we're seeing other remote platform coming out on provider care. And right before that was people are actually have these solutions where clinicians, nurses drive to the home for a home assessment. And now we really be able to provide even broader care for even the areas that hardly they don't have to take an hour right before they can seek any medical treatment. So when since you're being in the venture space and this is multiple journey for you and it's not something new for you, and it's exciting, and especially something that you have attached to your root, right? Like something personal.
Yes.
How big is Asha now? What's the highest level of fundraising that you guys are able to raise for us to celebrate your wins?
So I think we're about 20 people now. So we're growing very rapidly. Just in the last few months, we've had about 6 new folks join our team. And we have raised a very small amount actually to date from primarily just angel funding. But we're getting ready to actually open a new round of financing in the next month. So very excited about that. And I think the biggest wins for us is it's actually coming up in the next month. So we're getting ready to launch our first clinical study. We're partnered up with Washington State University and their Gleason Neuroscience Institute. So it'll be really, really exciting to get Asha in the hands of folks who can benefit from it and see what their experience is like. And then following that, we're actually doing our first major launch and deployment in the enterprise space, helping manage clinical trials. So it's a completely new area to us, but we're really excited to partner up with pharma companies and value-based providers to help make clinical trials more effective, shorter, and obviously more cost-effective as well.
Exactly. And I see that as your website even show, there's just so many different ways that you can support, whether employers benefit from not taking so many sick days just to take care of their elderly family, and to your point of having people that so easy to get to this specific set of elderly population for clinical trials for pharma, as well as for the people who are in the industry, right? Like for them to be able to say, let's practice, let's use it, let's have the tools. And especially Medicare and Medicaid is really pushing that remote telemedicine into the hands. So we just needed to make sure that people have the right resources, especially it's being paid for. And why not use that and leverage it? In the sense of if we're flipping to your investor hat, when you're thinking about looking for companies that you were interested to invest in those portfolios, and when people wanted to perhaps start reaching out to investors, what do you see as the best practices and the worst practices out there?
That's such a great question. And I think the fundraising landscape as a whole is changing quite drastically, especially in the last 6 months. Um, we're seeing now, because also of the high interest rates, and there were several bets that were made, I'd say, in the last couple of years that didn't quite pan out for early stage investors. So a lot of them are spending more time as venture funds on helping pull up their portfolio companies. And so you're seeing that this is very much a investor friendly market, if you will, for the last 3 years or so. And there's less and less capital being thrown at the really, really early stage investments. I'm talking sort of pre-seed, before you have customers, before you have revenue. And so I think this is going to change how people build companies, because access to that early capital may not be as widely available. So we're going to have to rely more on doing angel funding rounds and getting friends and family investors in the pipeline. And I think it's going to be a challenge for those who don't have relationships or communities that they can tap into, who can frankly write those kinds of checks, right? And be an accredited investor. So you're seeing a lot of that happening. There's also more emphasis on having more traction earlier on. And so a lot of venture funds are looking for early revenue as an indicator of product market fit. Whereas if you looked at it maybe 5 years ago, for a seed round, most seed stage VCs would be writing checks without seeing revenue. And so we're kind of seeing that sort of old business mentality coming back into fashion, if you will, for earlier stage rounds. And so it's very quickly going to weed out companies that are building products that aren't making money and that aren't actually making sustainable business models, right? And so you see the Ubers and the Facebooks of the world who are able to leverage their product in really unique ways, without necessarily having built that foundation of a sustainable commercial pipeline. But I don't think that's a luxury that most early stage founders have anymore. That ship has sailed. So if you're looking at this from a standpoint of how do you build a business now, and you're looking for that pre-seed investor, I would say this is the time to get creative. Tap into your community, tap into your network, and look for unique ways to get that early traction, so that you can parlay that into arguably what I would call kind of an early growth stage round.
Yeah, definitely is the main point on having a community. So if you don't know how to build it, you better find the people who know how to build communities really quickly. It's not just, hey, I want introductions. And if you're constantly seeking just introduction, then guess what? You still have to learn how to give back, right? Because community is built on win-win situation, on bilateral both way. So when you are searching, when you are really in a dire state, you still have to think about what is meant for you and meant for your company and meant for everybody else that are potential supporters, whether it's the immediate future or latter state. So community building is definitely a very critical thing. And if you don't think you're in the right community, it's time to move on or build your own. There are plenty of people who are truly want to support the healthcare environment, to support you as an individual or your idea. We just have to start opening up dialogue and having more effective dialogue. Now, if we're thinking about people who are in revenue, right, there are still a lot of them. Perhaps they have one or two big contracts and things as they're wrapping up, things perhaps didn't renew or they're waiting for that renewal to come out. Now they're thinking about what else can I do, right? Is that my only channel, my only market? What's that growth? So now they start doing that shape up state, right? They're not just a startup, just getting the model going. Now they're in that shape up state and then going even into a stand-up phase, right? That solidifying business model. So when they're in that phase, right, getting C round or potentially even Series A, what do you see as some of the challenges or perhaps the practices that are out there right now?
I think there's just a more stringent emphasis on what the growth looks like, the growth trajectory looks like. And there's fewer, I think there's a lot of consolidation plays in action as well. You're seeing in healthcare, thanks to the pandemic, one of the actually positive outcomes of the pandemic was that it really helped the healthcare industry recognize that there are significant gaps in how we do things. And because of that, there's been this huge push towards operationalizing and making more efficient the way our healthcare system as a whole works. And so you're seeing for the last few years, there have been a number of great ideas coming out of that. But a lot of them haven't followed through when it comes to actually building a cohesive business model that works, that's scalable, and that's growth oriented. So I think what you're seeing around that sort of Series B to C stage right now, in terms of growth rounds of investment, you're looking at consolidation plays. So there are private equity firms who are out there trying to pull together different parts of the healthcare puzzle and trying to consolidate those into plays that make sense holistically. And the reason they're trying to do that is because our healthcare system is so fragmented. So there are certainly smaller tools and technologies out there that are doing different snippets of, providing specific functionalities in different ways. But where it becomes the most interesting is when they all come together. And when they all come together, you can actually start creating those across the system efficiencies when you're looking at how you're coordinating care, when you're trying to ensure that there's greater access to care, For example, FHIR is one of the new ways of organizing and storing data and sharing access that is now being widely adopted throughout the healthcare industry as a whole. And so there are different ways for us to start sharing that data and create for just greater efficiencies across the board and create an environment where the patient then, hopefully, we're not there yet, will ultimately become the owner of their health data and leverage that to achieving better outcomes. So I think the consolidation play is definitely happening. And if you're a growth stage company who's looking at what's next, I've built this business model that works. I think you're probably thinking about, okay, now how do I make the pie bigger? And so either you're going to buy someone else, or maybe you're going to partner up with someone. But coming together and building out infrastructure in a meaningful way that is integrated into existing systems, I think is uniquely important moving forward at that stage.
I think you're so right, because nowadays we're always talking about collaboration, but true collaboration is not just, oh, if I think of you, I will get to you, right? That doesn't work. It become meaningful on what you said, Rashmi, on can I perhaps ready to acquire other smaller entities that are already doing something similar but fill in a gap, or I can be a referral partner that we go in together. We are assessing the situation and we are able to provide, instead of ABC solutions, now I have 3 additional ones to really complement, right? It's no longer just everyone going to the same type of client and then pitching 10,000 different idea, people getting confused even on who should they onboard, right? Whether you are pitching a larger organization or even the smaller practices that could really benefit. And when we come together, you have a slew of solutions and everything is integrated perhaps in their platform or consolidate instead of people have to log in everywhere else. Now, of course, is that also tells them you're helping them to reduce the multiple steps. You're helping them to actually create a better workflow, a better outcome, and it's not giving them extra work. I think adoption is so hard. Nowadays, it just seems like there's too many things out there and everybody have some kind of benefit, some kind of solution. But it also seems like from clinician or user side, oh, I'm good. Now you're making me do extra work instead of me seeing the end result, the benefit. So I definitely see that point about when you guys are in entities, companies in that Series B and above, you have some type of repeatable revenue model, and as you expand, how can you selectively connect with the right partners, the right people behind those messages and solutions, and to put together. Now, of course, one of the things we're always thinking about, it's a intellectual capital, right? That's what we're saying. It's like the true solution behind it and your unique. And then second is we mentioned even human capital, right? In the who you partner up with, and that also tap into the social capital about creating the community. That ultimately is the culture that we create, right? The culture capital. Then we truly can build our financial capital, right? And at the end of the day, everyone is going to have a different take. So when you think it's the right approach in terms of people realizing, okay, I'm ready for my next series funding, how do they find out a certain venture fund or private equity is going to be interested? How do they need to present themselves to be stand out more?
I think the standard question is you reach out, you share what you're working on, ask for feedback, and then see what they say. If you're at the earlier stages, right? If you're more at the growth stage, you probably already have a deck, maybe an investor summary that you send out. But a lot of it also comes down, I think, to creating demand. And so, if you're going out there, you're doing speaking engagements, or you're getting hopefully some organic PR that's cost effective, right? That helps you kind of craft this narrative and craft this story in such a way that it makes a splash with your prospective investors. I think always having hard data points to help back up what you're doing is such a huge asset, which is part of the reason, we're doing a clinical study, because we're largely not a product that requires regulatory compliance, but doing a study is such a value in terms of being able to leverage that data into customer conversations, investor conversations. And so I think crafting your story is the most important part. And if that story makes sense to investors, and that story needs to also include the path to commercialization and what that looks like. So it can't just be a story. I think if you are able to do that in a really compelling way and reach out to folks, hopefully through some warm introductions, then that's a great place to start. And then ultimately, whenever you hear a pass or a no, I think it's always prudent to ask why and figure out if there's any feedback there that you can learn from, that you can iterate on. As you know, as a founder, you're constantly learning. So it's important to keep your eyes and ears open as you're fundraising as well.
Yes, don't ever be afraid to reach out. And as many people actually care about, your idea and seeing that journey, even though you're not in the right place yet, and building that community, building that relationship from earlier on until you're ready, and be able to, yes, back up with data, but don't be so dry. Sometimes I see decks that just like all numbers. Now I'm like, okay, went over my head already. And instead of what Rashmi is saying is you need to create the hook in the beginning of the story. When people buy into your story, buy into you, buy into the mission behind you, then they care more about what is this actually going to be, and walk people through it, right? No one can read your mind, even though sometimes all your amazing founders have everything in your head. But if you can't pull it out for us, you can't paint a picture for us, it's really hard for any of us to say, yes, I support you. Let's figure out how. And definitely be able to showcase all of different pieces. Yeah, we're not saying it's easy. However, try, right? Like be dear enough to believe in yourself enough to have these open conversations, and you will get to the right spot. So we're so appreciative of you sharing and your knowledge, your success on creating Asha, in helping the senior space. We definitely see a lot of more senior movements coming out. Definitely excited to see all the more growth as you're supporting the founders, and as well as other people supporting you in your own venture. Awesome. Any last words as we are wrapping up today?
Ooh. Yeah, I think I have a lot of founder friends, and some of them are going through challenging environments, given the shift in the fundraising market. So I would say if you're in that space and you're having a hard time, get creative, find alternative ways of reaching the right people and figuring out how to get in the right room, and just stay at it. You got this.
Yes, stay at it. You got this. If you're listening to us on on your phone, watching it on any social platform or YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And we do want to hear from you. What's your funding journey has been like? What's the success you have had? And then what's some tips that you like to share with other people? Can't wait to hear all of your amazing advices and insights as well. Until next time, bye guys.
Thank you for listening to Health Tech Growth. If you're a healthcare tech innovator or founder interested in being a featured guest on our show, visit healthtechgrowth.io to learn more.